Some games are a product of their times. In 2005, The X-Files was still in the popular consciousness, and classic conspiracy theories were still fairly popular. The conspiracy theories where the government was in league with gray aliens to conquer the universe. In 2017, while The X-Files is not forgotten and actually has made a bit of a resurgence, it's still not nearly as popular as it once was, and government conspiracies are a little bit more, shall we say, mundane, and they're easily disproven. Area 51 was made at a time when games could actually be imaginative. It was indeed a product of its time because it actually combined elements of conspiracy theories and imagination to form a game that is actually quite the masterpiece. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. The masterpiece that is Area 51 really could not be replicated today, and that's primarily because the concept of the conspiracy theory has undergone evolution, for better or worse. Even as of 2007, it had already evolved to something far more political than it once had been. Back in the day, conspiracies were about the moon landing being faked, or Men in Black being in league with gray aliens. Now it's just unpleasant. Area 51 came at that perfect time where it could cash in on the concept of the conspiracy theory, and it actually showed the very concept some love. So with that, let's take a look at the game and see just why it is a masterpiece. Area 51 is actually a remake of an earlier Midway arcade game of the same name. Area 51, the light gun game, is a game where you play as a member of the Star Team. Aliens have invaded Area 51 and you must rid the base of their foul presence. The Area 51 FPS remake is actually a remake done right. The Area 51 light gun game didn't really have all that much story. It was meant to just be a quarter muncher. But despite that, the Area 51 FPS actually carries on some of the concepts seen in the original light gun game, such as the main enemy being alien/human hybrids. Midway cared enough about its earlier property to give it a proper updating. Area 51, the FPS, was developed by Midway Austin. It was developed in the year 2005. Midway Games has sadly long since died, but at one time they were a fairly large developer that gave us great arcade games, with the most well-known being Mortal Kombat. 2005 was certainly a different era from our own. For one, there were more developers of decent size back at that time, and AAA meant something very different back then. Area 51 was a AAA game for its day, and yet it did not come from the big three, as the gaming market was then much more multipolar than it is today, and devs had to actually compete with one another. The game itself was a multiple platform release, with the PC version actually being the last to be released. And the game itself is much more of a console FPS, meaning that even though we are looking at the PC version here, the graphics are not that amazing for 2005. The levels are decently designed, but fairly simple in their construction. The textures are also pretty much unimpressive. 3D models look like something out of Halo 1. In fact, the entire game's graphic design reminded me of something from Halo 1. At least until the final part of the game when you storm an alien base, and that's where the game's graphics really shine. Overall, the graphics have aged, and aged poorly. But then again, one must remember that this was a game developed for the consoles of the day, and this game looked great on the old PS2, which is where I played it first. It would be nice if this game got more love than it did, because if it had a good high-res texture pack, a number of the graphical issues would be fixed. Overall, the PC port is pretty good, but there are no advanced graphical options. Let's be honest here, this is no Doom 3, so even for the time, it would have not been that hard to run. The options menu at least works, unlike some modern day Capcom menus. You can remap controls, which some PC games in the modern era don't let you do, and overall I found the game to be very stable, and the frame rate was very consistent, with only 1 or 2 drops here and there, and they were not all that noticeable either. FOV is a bit of a problem when played at 1080p, as everything seems very zoomed in. Seriously, who holds a pistol that close to their face? I'm sure you can just edit an INI file or something along those lines to fix it. I was just lazy and couldn't be arsed to do it, as FOV does not really bother me. Gameplay for Area 51 is that of a top-tier FPS, with no two-weapon rule to be found. Set FOV to 100. Now, I won't catch my bloody nose when I rack the slide. So with that, let's take a look at the smoke poles with which you're going to be dispatching the foul Xenos with. You start up with a pistol that is actually pretty useful, as it was inspired by the old Halo 1 pistol. It's accurate and does good damage, but that is offset by low mag size and less than plentiful ammo. It's a uniquely designed pistol as well and looks quite cool. Early in development, it was supposed to be a bog standard Desert Eagle, as can be seen in some early footage of the game. I am quite glad that they went with this more futuristic design, although in the space year 2017, red dots on pistols are much more common, and thus the pistol looks a little less sci-fi than it did back in 2005. Next, we have the SMP. It's a basic SBR with a massive muzzle flash. This is going to be the main weapon for the game, as it has good range, good damage, and very plentiful ammo. The 3D model is actually unique, and is not just a boring M4 or M16. You can dual wield the rifle Halo Chef style, but this is not all that useful. In the latter half of the game, you will face enemy soldiers that can shoot back. Dual wielding reduces accuracy to nil. This means dual wielding is pretty bloody annoying. And dual wielding is handled differently in this game from other ones. You dual wield until your second gun runs out of ammo, at which time you discard the now empty gun. This means, of course, that you can't just switch to one rifle and just have the second rifle in reserve. Meaning that every time I picked up a second rifle, I just shot it dry and then discarded it, as fighting the enemy soldiers is hard enough as it is with just the one rifle that you can actually bloody well aim. Next, you have the shotgun. And by the great hammer of Telos, is it epic. 1 Spaz 12 is pretty cool, but 2 bolted together is epicness squared. Yes, the shotgun for Area 51 is a Spaz 12 with another Spaz 12 bolted to the side. If I had reviewed this several years ago, I would have mocked this, but these days I'm aware of a custom double-barreled 870 that is literally 2 870s bolted together. But that's not all. Let's not forget that double-barreled 1911 that's literally 2 1911s glued together. And of course, let's make sure we really don't forget the DP-12. Like with the rifle, you can dual wield them. The only reason Master Chief couldn't do such a thing was because in Halo, apparently 8 gauge is somehow able to be used in a pump shotgun. In this game, the player character is only lugging around a puny, girly, no offense, 12 gauge, and thus is able to easily dual wield 2 of the bloody things, or in this case, 4 of the bloody things. Unlike with the rifle, dual wielding is viable and is good when one needs to get up close and personal. Next, you have an SVD Dragunov, because even aliens know that Mother Russia makes the very best guns. It's a decent designated marksman's rifle and is very useful during some of the more open levels in the game. Then you have the BBG, which is one of the alien weapons. It has a regenerative ammo pool and is good for taking down turrets and the odd alien infantryman or two. And lastly, you have the Maison Cannon. It is the BFG of the game and is used very little, as in I used it maybe twice in the entire bloody game. You then have grenades, and these are somewhat useful, but their explosive radius is small, and the enemy gets more use out of them than you do. The enemies for the game are quite cool and vary themselves up a bit. When you start the game, you fight the Chimera, infected humans. Really, the first enemies you fight in the game look remarkably like the Chimera from the later Resistance Fall of Man series, making me wonder if some of the devs for this game went on to that series. Infected humans come in two flavors, melee and shooty, and both are fairly easy to dispatch, but they do like to attack you in heavy numbers. Towards the halfway point of the game, you face alien infantrymen, and these guys can be rather difficult to put down as their AI is not too bad. It's not fear level, but they do good damage to you and can throw grenades as well. It is about this point in the game where all the deaths will occur, and since this is a PC port, you cannot just save anywhere, meaning you're going to be reloading checkpoints every few seconds if you get unlucky. There are some other enemies in the game that are encountered infrequently. You have the ticks that show up once or twice and are somewhat of a threat, but really I just shot the lot of them and came out fine. Then you have this weird eldritch bubble alien thing. It makes really creepy sounds, but it's not all that much of a threat as it lacks a ranged attack, and usually you can dispatch them fairly easily. Bosses for the game are fairly basic, and you don't actually fight any of them until the second half of the game. The first half of boss that shows up is a gray alien that hides behind a force field and teleports in enemies. The second variety is a boss monster that looks really cool but doesn't take that much damage, and the main tactic for dispatching it is circle strafing. As this is a right and proper FPS, you do not have regenerative health. And this gives the game some legitimate challenge, as health pickups are sometimes hard to come by. And this even makes some of the turret sections legitimately difficult. And thankfully the turret sections in this game do not get dull. This is because you actually have a large number of enemies to fight, and you actually have to fight them as they can actually do damage to you. The turret sections are few and far between, and they actually serve to spice up the gameplay a little bit. The game even has some timed segments where you have to get to the lift, or stop a bomb from going off. And these segments are quite enjoyable as the time limits are generous and they serve to ramp up the stakes. Halfway into the game, you get some alien powers. The alien powers actually come in handy, and you never forget that they are there. You have the ability to use a claw swipe, and the more enemies you kill with the claw swipe, the more alien power juice you get. You also have a ranged power, and when you kill an enemy with this power, you get extra health. The alien mode supplements the shooty, and there are several times in the game where you need to go on an alien rampage just to survive, as the game really gets tough later on. Overall, the gameplay is excellent and never gets dull. The sound for the game is quite good as well. The alien-human hybrid sounds suitably scary, and the gun sounds suitably powerful, and the music, while not super unique, is at least decent. Although, no tracks really stand out. Voice acting is where the game really shines. And on that note, let's delve right into the story and see if the truth really is out there. The game starts up with a scientist named Dr. Cray. He is monologuing for a super advanced, alien-derived 3 megapixel, not just regular pixels, but megapixels, mini DV camera. Truly, this is some of the most high-tech shit I've ever seen. During the monologue, he says a number of cryptic things that will be explained later in the game if you pay attention. Long story short, he lets the Xenos out and they begin running amok. The alien-human hybrids work kind of like zombies. They live to infect other humans, and thus Area 51 starts to rapidly succumb to an alien zombie apocalypse. Also, these Azerties can shoot back and are more intelligent than your average shamblers. In the game, you play as Augustus Cole. The coal train is leaving the station. Destination, pain. Actually, you play as Ethan Cole, who is voiced by David Fox Mulder Duchovny. And he doesn't just phone it in either. He really gets into the character of Ethan Cole, and every line read actually sounds as good as his Fox Mulder work in X-Files. You and a team of hazmat specialists are sent to Area 51 to fight the alien Azerty virus. And you guys totally don't look like Delta Squad from Republic Commando, and totally are not called Delta Squad either. These guys are actually called Delta Squad Bravo Team. Totally different. Totally not like a combination of Delta Squad from Republic Commando and Bravo Team from Resident Evil. Inspiration aside, Delta Brav arrives on scene and Cole is given a quick refresher course on how to shoot, and I hate to admit it, but this tutorial is actually useful. I have since reevaluated tutorials in games. They are boring for gamers such as myself, but if you've not gamed in years, then they are good for getting back into gaming. Case in point, my grandfather hadn't played a game in years when I installed Area 51 on his PC, but after he played the tutorial, all his old gaming skills came back, and he found the game to be quite fun. After the Coal Train gets his shooting skills in order, he gets the Infotron 9000, aka the scanner. This is one of the coolest gadgets literally in all of the FPS genre, as it allows you to scan certain objects to learn more about them. And this factors into the information finding aspect of Area 51. Throughout the game, you can find top secret documents and things of that nature. The more you find, the more you learn about what is going on. The scanned items have little articles in the databank, and they make for some entertaining reading. The more secrets you find, the more secret files you unlock. These secret files are little 30-second video clips that flesh out the story even more and are very well acted. The story seen both in the game and in the databank and secret files is excellent, and show that the developers knew how to write, as the game's story is equal parts serious and humorous. And you will find yourself searching all throughout the levels for each and every top secret document, just so that you can see more clips of the mimetic Mr. White.
Some have called our plans a Luciferian conspiracy. But they will not say such things after the coming of the new guard. They will hold their tongues. Not because they have had a change of heart, but because... well, because they will already have rotted out from the inside. The chips we've implanted in the majority of the population under the guise of vaccinations allow us to watch the watchers. Now, how could anyone say the pact was a bad thing?
Oh my god, the anti-vaxxers were right! The world really is flat! We never went to the moon because it was made of Gouda cheese! And Neil Armstrong was lactose intolerant! After you get the scanner, you wander around a bit, and then get attacked by an agent trying to stop a shipment of alien parts from leaving the base. You kill said agent, but it is left a mystery as to whether or not he was a good guy or bad guy. You are then briefed by your commanding officer, voiced by the commanding Powers Booth. He does an amazing job with the role, and is a great voice with an internet connection for the game. Like with the other voice actors in the game, he doesn't just phone in his performance. He actually gets into the character. He actually approaches this game like it was a legitimate dramatic performance. Sadly, he is not seen all that much in the game, and eventually he just disappears. And it would have been nice to have seen him more in the game. Hell, it would have been nice to have had him actually interact personally with Ethan Cole at some point in the game. Or perhaps team up with Ethan Cole to take down the aliens. But sadly, he just disappears. When he's there, he's great though. You and the rest of Delta Team are then lowered on an elevator of doom into Area 51. In the game, Ethan Cole doesn't talk, except for one time, which we will talk about later. He is still rather verbose during the level transitions, and these level transitions are also quite well done as well. Just have a look.
The scientists who work at Dreamland are rumored to be some of the most brilliant minds in the world. They must have seen everything. Hell, they probably created everything. And yet they're terrified of what's beyond those doors. The doors I'm about to open. Lucky me.
For the very first half of the game, you'll be fighting through Area 51 with your squad. Your initial goal is to find a different Delta squad and see if they're alive. As you can imagine, they're not. Your squad has some good characterization, and there are some database supplements for each member of your squad. Sadly, they will of course die off, and as you would expect, the first guy to die is the one with the glasses. His supplement is also the funniest by far. Apparently Cole took him to a strip club and he brought a book, and then Cole paid a stripper $50 to place it somewhere special. A product of its time, ladies and gentlemen. Just imagine if this was released today. There would be countless Slate articles saying that the game was misogynistic, and dozens of YouTube videos calling it dangerous. Halfway into the game, the rest of your squad is wiped out, and you are left standing alone, and Cole actually speaks saying that he is alone.
Command to Has Team Bravo. Status report.
This is Cole, sir.
Specialist Cole. Where's Ramirez?
Dead, sir. They're all dead.
This is cool because so few games do this. They just keep the PC quiet for no reason. A small detail, but one I'm glad they put in. You then fight a bit with remnants of other squads, but then the real villains reveal themselves. The Illuminati show up to try and salvage the situation. And that means you and other witnesses need to die. So the Illuminati blow up an elevator you and other survivors were using to try and escape. You don't die when the elevator gets blown up, but you instead get infected by the alien virus. And thus you turn into one. But you are able to retain your humanity and get to slaying the Xenos. While in alien form, you meet Edgar. He is a gray alien that actually helps you turn human again. He is able to talk to you by possessing dead bodies, and fittingly enough, he is voiced by Marilyn Manson. Yeah, that guy. He sang the songs. He sang, Dracula. No, wait, that's Rob Zombie. He did the, Oh, right! He did the soundtrack to Resident Evil 1, the movie. Yeah, I knew who he was back in 2005, but I never listened to his music, so I can't really comment on its quality. In the game, however, he does an amazing job voicing the enigmatic Edgar. And he does have a few cool moments himself in the Area 51 behind-the-scenes featurette.
Area 51 that was interesting to me was that I'd be portraying an alien.
Our enemy hides with the machinery of deception.
And it seemed kind of to share a lot of similar feelings as I do. I have kind of a distaste for mankind.
That is the single most emo man who has ever lived. All shall hail King Emo. King Emo does get into the role just like everyone else in the game. And the game's personality really shines through the voice actors they got to voice many of these major characters. Without these voice actors, the game would just be a fairly good first-person shooter. But with them, it transcends to become something more. As you play throughout the second half of the game, the passion that went into this project really shines through. Edgar is able to help you become temporarily human, but then you have to find Dr. Cray. He will help you become fully human, in theory. He doesn't really care about you, just the science behind you as you're some sort of super alien human hybrid kind of guy, although this doesn't really factor that much into the plot. As once you find Dr. Cray, he puts you in a science machine and you kind of become human again, but not really because you can still toggle from human to alien. And you never really get to see where Cray was going with a number of things because he's immediately killed after you become mostly human. Up to the point when Dr. Cray dies, there hasn't been a main villain other than the alien virus. But with Dr. Cray's death, we are then introduced to Mr. White. He is a member of the Illuminati, and he will become the game's villain for a bit. Until you kill one of his many clones, and then he just disappears for the rest of the game, and the game's villain then becomes the Greys. Your plot goal for the game changes as you go through the game. Initially, you're just supposed to save Delta Squad Alpha, then it's become human again, and at the very end of the game, you have to stop the Xenos from escaping with the alien-human hybrid virus. The last part of the game has you taking the fight to the aliens themselves on their part of the Area 51 base. These are the most visually striking of all the levels and some of the most tough. Eventually you face the final enemy of the game, the core of the aliens' starship. And like, all sensitive power sources, it of course has guns on it. Yeah, I've never understood why power sources in games have to have bloody turret guns on them. Just imagine if a nuke reactor had some sort of machine gun turret every time you tried to service the bloody fuel rods. Or if your car's engine had bloody knives strapped to it and every time you tried to change the bloody oil, it stabbed you. Really, the bloody thing is sharp enough as it is. Destroying the core is not as easy as it first appears, and you can expect to die a lot trying to destroy it. After it's blown, the alien ship is sucked into an artificial singularity along with the rest of the Area 51 base. But you were able to escape by jumping through a teleporter, and Ethan Cole is left wondering what he has become now that he is a pure alien-human hybrid, and he wonders how long humanity will be safe from the threat of the foul Xenos. The ending for this game is very reminiscent of a number of X-Files endings, where it's very ambiguous as to what has just happened and what the eventual conclusion will be. Sadly, we would never get a conclusion because this is just a one-and-done game. To say that this game is a masterpiece would be an understatement. The story is amazingly well written with numerous little details that are easy to miss, but it's not just the writing, it's how everything in this game comes together that puts this above other FPS games. This game had passion put into it. The devs put their heart and soul into the game, and the various actors gave it their all too. And not one of them turns in a crappy performance. Hell, you can really see the passion the people making the game had just by watching the behind-the-scenes featurette that came with the game. Everyone on the project cared about what they were doing, and they were not just turning out another bowl of mush for third quarter profits. This game really is a product of its time. It was made during an era where developers were not constrained by modern-day political correctness. It was made in an era where the gaming consumer mattered, and it was made in an era where imagination still ruled the day, and I cannot recommend it enough.
Like with so many classic games, this neither has a Steam or GOG version, so you have to find it yourself on the interwebs. That being said, there are of course the two console ports. I have not played the Xbox port, but I have played the PlayStation 2 port, and it is every bit as good as the PC port, although it has a slightly lower frame rate. In the end, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good Area 51, the arcade game, and good T2, the arcade game, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed my review of Area 51, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you these awesome game reviews.